The Great Hall of the Galactic Assembly was the largest structure ever built by living beings. It floated in the empty space between three star systems, a massive ring of metal and glass that could hold millions. Today, it held representatives from over 3,000 different species, and all of them had come to watch humanity fall. Ambassador Yuna stood alone on the central platform. She was a small woman with black hair pulled back tight, and eyes that showed nothing of what she felt inside. Behind her, in the section marked for human delegates, sat only 12 people. 200 years ago, when humanity first joined the assembly, that section had been filled with hopeful faces. Now it was nearly empty. High Speaker Vorin of the Talani Confederacy rose from his elevated seat. He was tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and a crest of bone that ran from his forehead to the back of his neck. When he was angry, that crest would rise and turn dark purple. Right now, it was very dark indeed. The assembly has reached its decision, Vorin announced. His voice carried through the hall, translated instantly into thousands of languages by systems that human engineers had designed. The human colony on Kepler 7 was attacked by forces of the Dreth Dominion. This attack was a lawful response to human expansion into contested territory. Yuna felt her hands tighten into fists at her sides. She forced them to relax. Admiral Siok of the Human Defense Fleet responded to this lawful action with military force, Vorin continued. He destroyed 14 Dreth warships and killed over 6,000 Dreth soldiers. He did this without authorization from this assembly. In the seats around the hall, delegates from dozens of species nodded their heads or made whatever gesture their kind used to show agreement. Yuna looked at them and remembered. She remembered when the Vrel swarm had invaded the Outer Rim territories 50 years ago. The Vrel were insects, each one the size of a small ship, and they traveled in groups of millions. They had attacked the Talani first. Vorin's own homeworld had been in danger. And who had answered the call for help? Humanity. Human ships had burned. Human soldiers had died. And the Vrel had been pushed back. She remembered the plague of Silentus, a disease that killed by stopping all sound in a victim's body. Hearts stopped beating. Lungs stopped breathing. It had spread through the Undari systems like fire, and who had found the cure? Human doctors. 37 of them had died in the process, working until the sickness took them. She remembered 100 other moments. 1,000 sacrifices, all made by humans for species that had now come to judge them. Admiral Sok acted to save 3 million human civilians, Yuna said, her voice cutting through the hall. Men, women, and children who had been under siege for 19 days. They sent distress calls. They begged for help, and this assembly voted to study the situation further. Vorin's crest darkened even more. The proper procedures must be followed. The Dreth had filed a territorial claim. The matter was under review. 3 million people were dying. That does not give your species the right to act without permission. Yuna stared at him. She had spent her entire adult life as a diplomat. She had learned to smile when she wanted to scream, to speak softly when she wanted to shout. But in that moment, something inside her changed. She looked around the hall. She saw the Undari delegates, their silver bodies gleaming under the lights. Humans had saved their entire species. They had voted against humanity. She saw the Talani, whose world still stood because human soldiers had held the line against the Vrel. They had led the charge to punish humanity. She saw 100 other species who owed their lives, their freedom, their very existence to human sacrifice. None of them spoke in humanity's defense. Not one. The assembly finds humanity guilty of unauthorized military action, Vorin declared. All human military vessels are ordered to stand down indefinitely. Human expansion beyond current borders is forbidden. Reparations of 12 trillion credits will be paid to the Dreth Dominion over the next 50 years. The hall erupted in sounds of approval. Clicks, whistles, rumbles, and roars filled the air as 3,000 species celebrated the humiliation of humanity. Yuna stood perfectly still. General Teho, the commander of all human ground forces, leaned forward from his seat behind her. He was a broad man with a scar running down the left side of his face, earned in a battle fought to protect Talani colonies. They are making an example of us, he whispered. They want every species to see what happens when someone acts without their permission. Yuna nodded slowly. She understood now. She understood everything. For 200 years, humanity had believed they were part of something greater. They had believed that the assembly was a family of species, working together for the common good. They had given their blood, their treasure, their brightest minds and bravest hearts. And what had they received in return? They had received this. A trial. A punishment. A reminder that humanity was not a partner. Humanity was a tool. Useful when needed, discarded when not, and punished when it dared to act on its own. Fleet Commander Hana, a woman with short gray hair and eyes like chips of ice, spoke from her seat. What do we do now? Ambassador? Yuna did not answer immediately. She watched as the delegates celebrated. She watched as Vorin smiled his thin, satisfied smile. She watched as 200 years of service and sacrifice were erased by a single vote. Then she turned and walked back to her seat. Her face showed nothing. Her voice was calm. Now, she said quietly. We remember. General Tejo frowned. Remember what? Yuna sat down and folded her hands in her lap. Around them, the celebration continued. Species that humanity had saved laughed and cheered at humanity's fall. We remember this moment, Yuna said. We remember every face, every voice, every vote. And when the time comes, we remind them what humanity truly means. Tejo and Hana exchanged glances. They had known Yuna for many years. They had never heard her speak like this. What are you planning? Hana asked. Yuna watched as Vorin accepted congratulations from the other delegates. She watched as the Dreth ambassador smiled with all three of his mouths. She watched as the galaxy celebrated the chains they had placed around humanity. I am planning, she said softly, to show them what the galaxy looks like without us. The celebration continued for 3 more hours. Humanity sat in silence through all of it, and in that silence, something new was born. Something that would change the galaxy forever. 3 days passed after the verdict. 3 days of silence from the human delegation. 3 days of celebration throughout the galaxy as news of humanity's punishment spread from system to system. The assembly gathered again on the 4th day. High Speaker Vorin had called the session to receive humanity's formal apology. This was tradition. When a species was punished, they apologized. They accepted their place. They promised to do better. Vorin sat in his elevated chair and watched the entrance to the Great Hall. He expected to see Ambassador Yuna walking in with her head bowed, ready to speak words of regret and submission. He expected to enjoy this moment. What he saw instead made his crest rise in confusion. Yuna walked into the hall, but her head was not bowed. She walked straight and tall, her eyes fixed forward. She wore not the soft robes of a diplomat, but a simple black uniform with a single silver star on the collar. Behind her walked not diplomats or advisors, but soldiers. General Tejo was there in his full military dress, medals covering his chest. Fleet Commander Hana walked beside him, her gray hair pulled back tight, her uniform perfect. Behind them came 12 more officers, each one decorated, each one silent, each one looking straight ahead. They walked to the central platform. They did not bow. They did not kneel. They stood in a line and faced the assembly. The hall fell silent. Something was wrong. Everyone could feel it. Yuna stepped forward. In her hand she held a single data tablet, small and thin. She looked around the hall slowly, meeting the eyes of delegate after delegate. Honored delegates of the Galactic Assembly, she began. Her voice was calm and clear, carrying to every corner of the massive space. I come before you today not to apologize. Whispers spread through the hall. Vorin leaned forward in his seat. For 200 years, Yuna continued. Humanity has served this assembly. We did not ask for payment. We did not demand recognition. We served because we believed in what this assembly represented. Unity, cooperation, a galaxy where species helped each other. She paused and let the silence stretch. When the Vril swarm invaded, your fleets ran. Human fleets stayed. We lost 47 ships and 12,000 soldiers in that war. We never asked for anything in return. The Tilani delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. When the plague of Silentus spread through the Andari systems, your doctors refused to go. Too dangerous, they said. Human doctors went anyway. 37 of them never came home. We never asked for anything in return. The Andari delegates looked away. When the Void Raiders threatened the trade routes that feed 100 worlds, your governments debated. Human soldiers fought. We held the line for 3 years. 4,000 of our people died in darkness, far from home, protecting species they had never met. We never asked for anything in return. Yuna's voice grew harder now, each word falling like a stone into still water. And when 3 million of our people faced death on Kepler 7, when our children cried out for help, when our families sent message after message begging for rescue, what did this assembly do? She looked directly at Voron. You debated. You discussed. You formed committees. And then you punished us for saving our own people. Voron stood up, his crest fully extended now, dark purple with anger. Ambassador, you will show proper respect to this assembly. You will apologize for your species' actions and accept the judgment that has been passed. Yuna did not move. She did not blink. No. The single word echoed through the hall. No one had ever refused a high speaker's direct command. No one had ever dared. This assembly has shown us who you truly are. Yuna said, you see, humanity not as partners, but as servants, not as friends, but as tools. You take our sacrifices and give nothing in return. You punish us for refusing to let our children die. She lifted the data tablet. So let me show you who we truly are. She pressed a single button. Throughout the great hall, every screen flickered. Every display changed. On every surface, in every language, a single message appeared. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Assembly. Effective immediately. The hall erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted. Some stood up. Others called for order. But Yuna was not finished. We are taking back everything we have given, she announced over the noise. Every ship we built for your defense. Every medical database our doctors created. Every translation system our engineers designed. Every piece of technology we shared freely with species who never thanked us. She turned to look at the Talani section. Your defense grid was designed by human engineers. It will stop working in 30 days. She looked at the Andari. Your medical networks run on human code. They will shut down in 60 days. She looked around at the entire assembly. The navigation beacons that guide your ships through hyperspace. The communication systems that let you talk to each other. The early warning satellites that watch for threats. All of it runs on human technology. All of it will be recalled. Voron's voice cracked as he shouted over the chaos. You cannot do this. We have treaties, agreements. Yuna smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You broke those agreements when you punished us for saving our own people. You showed us that treaties mean nothing when one side has power and the other has none. So we are taking our power back. She turned and began to walk toward the exit. Her officers followed in perfect formation. Wait, Voron shouted. We can discuss this. We can negotiate. Yuna stopped. She did not turn around. You had 200 years to treat us as equals. You chose not to. Now you will learn what the galaxy looks like without humanity. She resumed walking. And when the darkness comes, she said, her voice carrying one last time through the hall. Remember that you chose this. Not us. The human delegation reached the exit. They walked through the great doors. They did not look back. Behind them, 3,000 species watched in stunned silence. For the first time in 200 years, they felt something they had never felt before. Fear. Not fear of an enemy or a disaster or a disease. Fear of absence. Fear of what would happen when the species that had always protected them, always helped them, always sacrificed for them, was simply gone. The great doors closed behind the humans with a sound like thunder, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months passed after the humans left, and the galaxy began to fall apart. It started small. A translation error between 2 trading partners. A medical system that suddenly stopped updating. A navigation beacon that went dark in a busy shipping lane. Small problems. Easy to ignore. Then the small problems became big ones. On the planet Thessor, home to the Andari people, The medical networks crashed completely on day 62. Just as Yuna had promised, hospitals that had relied on human-designed systems for a century suddenly found themselves unable to access patient records. Doctors could not check medication histories. Surgeons could not view diagnostic scans. In one terrible week, over 10,000 Andari died from simple mistakes that the old systems would have prevented. The Andari government sent urgent messages to the assembly, demanding help. They received forms to fill out and committees to consult. By the time anyone responded, the death toll had reached 50,000. On the Tilani homeworld, the defense grid flickered and died on day 31. High Speaker Voran stood in his command center and watched as the invisible shield that had protected his world for 80 years simply disappeared. His military advisors told him not to worry. The Tilani had their own fleet. They could defend themselves. They were wrong. The Void Raiders came 3 months later. Without the human-designed early warning satellites, no one saw them coming until they were already in orbit. The Tilani fleet fought bravely, but they had forgotten how to fight without human tactics, human weapons, human strategies. The raiders burned 2 cities before they were driven off. Voran walked through the ruins of the second city, stepping over broken stone and twisted metal. Children's toys lay scattered in the ash. The smell of smoke filled the air. "How many?" he asked his advisor, a Tilani female named Keth. 47,000 dead, Keth replied. Another 100,000 homeless. Voran closed his eyes. Send another message to the humans. Offer them whatever they want. Offer them anything. Keth was quiet for a moment. This is the 18th message we have sent, High Speaker. They do not respond. Then we send a 19th. And a 20th. We keep sending until they answer. Keth looked at the destruction around them. Perhaps, High Speaker, they do not want anything from us anymore. Perhaps they simply want us to understand. Understand what? What we did to them. What we took for granted. Voran had no answer for that. Meanwhile, in human space, life was very different. Ambassador Yuna had been elected Chancellor by the United Human Governments. She led from a station called New Sol, a massive structure that orbited Earth's moon. From there, she oversaw the rebirth of human civilization. Trade ships still left human space, but they only visited species who had never been part of the assembly. Small empires on the edge of known space, independent worlds that had always treated humanity with respect. These new partners were grateful for human technology and paid fair prices for it. New factories opened on human worlds. New ships were built in human shipyards. For 200 years, humanity had given its best work to the assembly for free. Now that work stayed at home. General Teho, now Minister of Defense, built a new military. Not the scattered peacekeeping forces that had served the assembly, but a true defense force. Ships designed for one purpose: protecting human worlds. Soldiers trained to fight for one cause: human survival. Admiral Hana commanded the First Fleet from her flagship, the HSS Resolve. She spent her days running drills and war games, preparing for threats that might never come. Some called her paranoid. She called it careful. One evening, Yuna stood on the observation deck of New Sol Station with Teho and Hana beside her. Through the great window, they could see Earth below, blue and green and beautiful. Beyond it, the stars spread out in all directions. The assembly sent another message today, Yuna said. They are begging us to return. Teho made a sound of disgust. Let them beg. They punished us for saving our own children. Their worlds are falling apart, Hana added. The Telani were raided last month. The Andari lost half their medical infrastructure. 3 smaller species have already collapsed into civil war. Yuna nodded slowly. I know. And you feel nothing? Teho asked. No desire to help them? Yuna was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. I feel everything. I remember the doctors who died curing the Andari plague. I remember the soldiers who gave their lives defending Tilani worlds. I remember every sacrifice humanity made for species who never thanked us. She turned to face her old friends. But I also remember the vote. I remember watching 3,000 species condemn us for saving our own people. I remember the celebration, the cheering, the joy they took in our punishment. She looked back at the stars. They are learning now what they should have learned long ago. Humanity was never their servant. We were their partner, and they threw that partnership away for politics and pride. So we do nothing? Hana asked. We do plenty. We protect our own worlds. We build our own future. We trade with those who treat us fairly, and ignore those who do not. Yuna's voice grew harder. And we remember. We remember who stood with us and who stood against us. When the darkness comes, and it will come, we will remember. Teho frowned. What darkness? Yuna shook her head. I do not know yet. But I have read the old histories. The galaxy is not a peaceful place. Every few thousand years, something terrible rises, something that threatens all life. When that happens, species must stand together, or die alone. And when that day comes, Yuna smiled, but it was a sad smile. When that day comes, we will have a choice to make. And so will they. Outside the window, the stars continued to shine. Somewhere out in that vast darkness, something ancient was beginning to stir. Something that had slept for 100,000 years. The humans did not know it yet. Neither did the assembly, but they would learn soon enough. The signal came from the edge of known space, far beyond the borders of the assembly or any other civilization. It was old. So old that the language it used had not been spoken for 100,000 years. Scientists across the galaxy worked for 3 days to translate it. When they finally understood the message, they wished they had not. Harvesting cycle begins. All organic matter will be collected. Resistance is inefficient. The harvesters had awakened. They were machines, built long ago by a species that no longer existed. Their purpose was simple: travel through space, find worlds with life, and strip them bare. Every plant, every animal, every thinking being, all of it turned into fuel for their endless journey. The first world to fall was a small colony on the outer rim. 800,000 people lived there, farmers mostly, growing food for nearby systems. One day they were going about their normal lives. The next day, their world was silent. The rescue ships found nothing. Not bodies, not buildings, not even soil. The harvesters had taken everything organic and left behind only bare rock. News of the attack spread through the assembly like fire. High Speaker Vorin called an emergency session. For the first time in 6 months, the Great Hall was full again. But this time, there was no celebration. Only fear. We must form a united fleet, declared the Andari ambassador. Pool our resources, fight together. With what? Asked another delegate. The Talani fleet was destroyed in the Void Raider attack. The Andari have no warships. Who will fight? We must contact the humans, Vorin said. The words seemed to hurt him as he spoke them. They are the only species capable of fighting a threat like this. They hate us, someone shouted from the upper seats. We condemned them. We humiliated them. Why would they help us now? Vorin had no answer. But he sent the message anyway. A message to Chancellor Yuna, begging for help. The most powerful leader in the galaxy. On his knees before a species he had tried to destroy. 3 weeks passed. The harvesters moved faster than anyone had expected. 12 systems fell silent, then 20, then 40. Each time, the same result. Bare rock, where living worlds had been. On Earth, Chancellor Yuna sat in a meeting room with her closest advisors. Defense Minister Teho stood by the window, his arms crossed over his chest. Admiral Hana sat at the table, studying reports from the front lines. Around them sat generals, scientists, and diplomats. The harvesters have destroyed 47 worlds, Hana reported. They are moving toward the central systems. At their current speed, they will reach the assembly homeworlds in 8 months. Let them, Teho said coldly. The assembly left us to die. Why should we save them? Several heads nodded around the table. The wounds of the past were still fresh. Many of the people in this room had lost friends in battles, fought for ungrateful allies. We should consider our own borders, said one general. The harvesters may come for us eventually. We should prepare our defenses. Our defenses are strong, Hana replied. But even we cannot fight the harvesters alone forever. If they destroy the assembly worlds, they will grow stronger. More ships, more power. Eventually, they will come for us, and we will face the full might of a force that has consumed half the galaxy. Yuna had been silent throughout the discussion. Now she spoke. How many people live on assembly worlds? Hana checked her data. Approximately 4 trillion. 4 trillion, Yuna repeated softly. Children, families, people who never voted for our punishment, people who never even knew what their governments did to us. Teho turned from the window. And what about our people? Our children? Our families? We sacrificed for the assembly for 200 years, and they threw us away like garbage. I know, Yuna said. I remember everything. I remember every vote against us, every celebration of our punishment, every message they ignored when we tried to make peace. She stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Earth turned slowly in the darkness, blue and green and alive. But I also remember why we went to the stars in the first place. We did not go seeking power or glory. We went seeking connection. We wanted to believe that life, wherever it existed, was precious, that different species could work together, that the universe was not just darkness and death. She turned to face the room. The assembly betrayed that dream. They showed us that the galaxy is cruel and selfish. But does that mean we must become cruel and selfish too? No one answered. If we let 4 trillion people die when we could have saved them, what does that make us? If we let children burn because their grandparents voted wrong, what does that make us? Teho's jaw tightened. It makes us survivors. No, Yuna said quietly. It makes us them. The room fell silent. Admiral Hana spoke first. I joined the fleet to protect people. Not just human people. All people. That is what we used to stand for. One by one, other voices joined hers. A general who had lost his son fighting for Undari colonies. A scientist who had watched human doctors die curing alien plagues. People who had every reason to hate the assembly. Choosing something else. Teho looked at them all. His face was hard, but something shifted in his eyes. If we do this, he said slowly, we do it on our terms. We save them because we choose to. Not because they asked. Not because they deserve it. But because we are better than them. Yuna nodded. Prepare the fleet. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon we built during our years of silence. She looked around the room at the faces of humans who had been hurt, betrayed, and abandoned, and who were now choosing to save their enemies. Let us show the galaxy what humanity truly is. 3 days later, the message went out across all frequencies. Simple, clear, impossible to ignore. Humanity is coming. In the assembly hall, Vorin heard those words and fell to his knees. Around him, delegates wept with relief. On 100 worlds, people who had celebrated humanity's punishment now prayed for human salvation. And in human space, 1,000 warships began to move toward the darkness. The human armada emerged from hyperspace like a storm breaking across the sky. 1,000 warships, carriers that held 100 fighters each. Destroyers bristling with weapons, and at the center, the great dreadnoughts, each one 5 kilometers long. Built in secret, during the years of silence. At the head of the fleet flew the HSS Resolve, Admiral Hana's flagship. She stood on the command bridge, looking out at the wall of harvester ships that blocked their path. There were thousands of them, massive black shapes with no windows, no markings, no sign that living beings had ever built them. All ships. This is Admiral Hana, she said into the fleet-wide channel. We are not here for glory. We are not here for revenge. We are here because there are innocent people behind that wall of machines. And they will die if we do not stop this. She paused, letting her words sink in. The harvesters have never lost. They have destroyed civilizations for 100,000 years. Today, we teach them something new. Today, we teach them fear. The fleet roared forward. The Battle of the Void Threshold, as it would later be called, lasted 9 days. 9 days of fire and death and impossible courage. Human tactics were unlike anything the harvesters had faced before. For 100 millennia, they had fought species that formed neat lines and followed predictable patterns. Humans did not fight that way. Human ships broke formation, and attacked from unexpected angles. Human pilots took risks that no machine could calculate. Human soldiers did things that made no logical sense but somehow worked anyway. On the third day, Admiral Hana led a strike team directly into the heart of the Harvester fleet. 20 ships against 1,000. Everyone told her it was suicide. She went anyway. Her team found the Central Command ship, a massive structure that coordinated all Harvester movements. While her ships distracted the enemy, Hana herself led a boarding party inside. For 6 hours, human soldiers fought through corridors of ancient metal, facing machines that were stronger, faster, and built only for killing. Hana lost an arm in that fight. She kept going anyway. When her team finally reached the core, they planted charges that blew the command ship apart from inside. Hana barely made it back to her shuttle before the explosion. But when she emerged from the fireball, broadcast live across the galaxy, the human fleet roared with triumph. The Harvesters could be killed. On the 6th day, the ground war began. The machines had landed on 3 assembly worlds and begun their harvest. General Tejo led the defense personally, dropping from orbit with 50,000 soldiers to protect civilians who had once cheered for his people's punishment. He did not care about their past. He cared about their children. For 3 days, human soldiers fought street by street, building by building. They formed walls with their bodies to protect alien families they had never met. They carried wounded enemies to safety while the machines hunted them. They died so that others might live. Tejo himself held a bridge for 7 hours while refugees crossed to safety. When his ammunition ran out, he fought with his knife. When his knife broke, he fought with his hands. Only when the last civilian was safe did he allow himself to fall. Medics found him unconscious but alive, surrounded by the broken remains of 12 Harvester soldiers. On the 9th day, the last Harvester ship fell silent. The battle was over. Chancellor Yuna arrived at the assembly hall 3 days later. The great building was damaged now, its walls scarred by weapons fire, its windows cracked. But it still stood. Inside, thousands of delegates waited in silence. They were not the proud, confident beings who had condemned humanity 6 months ago. They were survivors. Many had lost homes. Many had lost families. All had lost their sense of safety. Yuna walked to the central platform. She wore a simple black uniform, the same one she had worn when she announced humanity's withdrawal. Behind her walked Admiral Hana, her empty sleeve pinned to her side, and General Tejo, still bandaged from his wounds. The hall was completely silent. "We came," Yuna began, her voice echoing through the space, "because we remember who we wanted to be when we first reached for the stars." She looked around at the faces watching her. Telani, Undari, 100 other species, all of them waiting for her words. We wanted to believe that life was precious. All life. We wanted to believe that different species could be friends. We wanted to build something better than the darkness we came from. She paused. You taught us that the galaxy does not share those dreams. You taught us that power matters more than loyalty, that politics matters more than sacrifice, that we were never your partners, only your servants. High Speaker Vorin lowered his head in shame. Around him, other delegates did the same. But even after everything you did to us, Yuna continued, we could not let you die. Not because you deserved saving, not because you asked, but because we are human. And this is what humans do. She took a step forward. We came back. We bled for you again. We died for you again. And now we are leaving again. Vorin looked up. Please, he said, his voice breaking. Stay. Lead us. We will follow you. Yuna shook her head slowly. You do not understand. We are not leaving because we hate you. We are leaving because we do not trust you. Trust is earned, not given. And you have done nothing to earn ours. She turned to go, then stopped. The next time darkness comes, and it will come, ask yourselves this question. Not whether humanity will save you, but whether you have become worth saving. She looked back one last time. Perhaps if you spend the next 100 years treating each other the way we treated you, the answer will be yes. But that is your choice to make, not ours. The human delegation walked out of the Great Hall. They did not look back. Outside, shuttles waited to carry them home. The fleet still hung in orbit. Ships scarred from battle, crews exhausted but proud. They had come to save a galaxy that had abandoned them, and they had succeeded. Admiral Hana stood beside Yuna as they boarded the shuttle. "Do you think they will change?" she asked. Yuna watched as the doors closed, blocking her view of the assembly hall. "I do not know," she admitted. "But I know this. We showed them what humanity means. We showed them that power is not the only thing that matters. We showed them that mercy is not weakness." The shuttle lifted off. "And if they learn nothing from that," Yuna said quietly, "then they were never worth saving in the first place." The human fleet departed that day. The galaxy watched them go in silence. No celebrations this time. No cheering. Only silence. And in that silence, something changed. For the first time in their history, 3,000 species looked at the stars and understood what they had lost. Not servants, not tools, but friends who had loved them enough to die for them, and who had finally, rightfully, walked away. The humans returned to their own space. They built their own future. They lived their own lives, and the galaxy never forgot what humanity had taught them. Some lessons can only be learned in silence.